Welcome back to Gold and Black Live. We have a special guest here for this segment, Buddy Baker, President CEO of Exclusive Sports Group. And if you know Purdue sports, you know Buddy. He's been around it for a long time. He's not that old, but he has been around it for a little while. Obviously, as a Purdue student manager back in the day, and he's evolved into quite a successful, very successful sports agency, and has been involved with Matt Painter and Konzo Martin, among others, as clients and friends too, Carl Landry too, and many, many others. But Buddy, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and Buddy, it's an interesting time, obviously, and we'll start maybe with just looking ahead. You can put your basketball manager, or at least in your been close to Purdue basketball, watching it for all these years. A lot of excitement headed into this year. This is a very talented roster. You were around when Glenn Robinson was around in your college days, but this is a team that Coach Matt Painter and company have really got a lot of things that can really be happening in a very positive way this year.
Yeah, I think every Purdue fan is excited for the upcoming season, but I think we're equally excited as far as the program that Matt is building. I mean, Matt has built a tremendous culture at Purdue that should be sustainable for many years to come. Whether you talk to former players, current players, current coaches, former coaches, just Purdue is regarded as kind of the staple of college basketball. And a lot of that is owed to what, Matt has done there.
You look at your role, and obviously you were there when he was a player as well, and known him for a long time. Just your relationship with him, even as your days as a college student, and how did you guys get attracted to one another and become friends, and obviously business partners as well? But what's special about him, and why are you guys a good match for one another?
Sure. Well, I mean, I was a manager for the program from 1990 to 94, and obviously he was there playing during the 3 of those years. So we became very good friends in college and remained friends after college when I was in law school, and he was at the infancy stages of his coaching career. And through the years, obviously, as I evolved in my profession and he did as well, it made sense for us to kind of join forces. It's interesting because as a native New Yorker and somebody who's regarded as kind of someone who is going to say what he feels and kind of not worried about kind of the consequences sometimes, Matt's the opposite. Matt is, is one of the most likable, sincere, genuine people. I'm not calling myself insincere or disingenuous, but Matt is just, his humility is very rare among successful people, better yet people in the world of college athletics or professional athletics. And very rarely do you find in my 25 years in the business, someone that you can say hasn't really changed. And Matt is one of the people that you can really look at and say, he hasn't really changed. Now, he's evolved as a person, as we all do, and certainly as a coach. But the core of who he has been, who he was, has remained the same. And that's just rare when you have success and you have notoriety and you have people who, kind of look at everything that you do, especially in the spotlight of Purdue athletics and Purdue basketball, and following up on Coach Keady, right? People forget sometimes that he followed an icon, right? He followed somebody who's a Hall of Famer, and it was seamless because of his humility, because of his desire, and quite frankly, partly because of his love of Purdue.
Yeah, I think you guys complement each other well, and points taken on your own personality. It's the role that you play. But what makes him, what in that evolution over the years, he hasn't changed, but he has been able to change certain things about the way he coaches, I think, and that's been an evolutionary process for him. He's had to overcome a couple of years where things weren't as good, and he kind of reinvented himself. Do you look at it that way in terms of how he's continued to evolve as a basketball coach into one of the best in the country?
I think what he does, which is similar to how I've tried to incorporate it in my business, is he understands who he is.
Yeah.
He doesn't try to be someone else. And what Matt does is he doesn't try to win every recruiting battle, or he tries to win as a coach, as a program, and what he's trying to build. So what he might not get all McDonald's, all Americans, he develops players that want to be Purdue players that aren't there for other reasons other than they want to be part of Purdue. Do they want to eventually become NBA players? And of course, right? And that's kind of what you're looking for, to be competitive on a national scale. But he understands who he is, what he's looking for. He's unwilling to change from that perspective. And again, not in an arrogant or a steadfast position, but in a way like, hey, this is what Purdue Athletics is. We can help you grow as a student athlete. We can help you grow as a basketball player. We can help you grow as a young man. And there are people that are looking for that. That doesn't mean everyone is. And so he's great at identifying that. And then you couple that with he's a savant in basketball. He's a very, very intelligent basketball brain, mind, etc. He always has, even from his playing days. He's a basketball historian, and he knows all those different things, and he respects what's been done before him. He respects what's being done around him. And kind of that's unique, right? That's unique to kind of have all those things incorporated into one person. And because of that, he's grown so comfortable. We're obviously very similar in age. As you grow your business or as you grow your program, you become comfortable in your own skin, right? In your own shoes. And that's what he is. And when you are that kind of, people see that. People see that you're not trying to be anybody else. You're trying to be who you are. And he's not trying to make Purdue basketball similar to another program. He's trying to make other programs want to be like Purdue basketball. And it's been pretty special to watch.
You had the experience of working with Coach Gene Keady as a manager and being around him as well. I'll ask this kind of as a two-part question. What have you taken in your business life from Gene Keady? And what do you think Matt has? I mean, there's some obvious things, but is there anything that's maybe not, that doesn't meet the eye, that is a Gene Keady trait that lives on, especially in a guy like Matt Painter?
Yeah, I think that sometimes, I think everyone saw Coach Keady scowl and thought he was this mean, angry guy that you feared. Coach Keady is one of the most likable people you can be around.
Yeah.
I think, Matt is a guy who's affable, who's likable, etc. But I think what he takes and what he's taken from Coach is the opposite, right? Well, he's that on the outside. But people don't understand, he's also tough, right? He's also a no-nonsense guy that has expectations for his players, for his program in general. And that's something I think that he probably learned, working under and playing under Coach Keady. And I would echo that in my business, right? And then the last thing I think that Matt and I can both say is Coach operated with integrity, and kind of had a bigger picture in mind. And that's kind of, as somebody who represents athletes and coaches and kind of guides them in their professional and personal lives, those are traits I certainly try to echo as I run my company.
Tell me about just how you got involved with this. Obviously, you went to law school after your days at Purdue. Was this something you thought about if you weren't going to play in the NBA and all of that, that this would be something that you always wanted to do growing up?
No, actually, I didn't. Was something I thought was cool, sure, but it's not something I thought was possible. I owe a lot of my, success and where I am today to the opportunity which was afforded to me by Coach Keady. If I would have never worked for the Purdue basketball team, and I've said this and I'll say it again and again, if I didn't work for the Purdue basketball team, none of this would have been possible. It opened up doors for me to understand the business of sports. And because when you get to that level, it's a business, right? And so when you understand the business of sports, again, I understood it at a very fundamental stage, right, as a student manager. But it was something that, I couldn't have enjoyed more. I was always had a passion for the game. And then when I coached a little bit between college and law school, and then when I went to law school and I became a lawyer, the law firm I was at was, encouraging of me kind of starting my own practice. Well, I said, well, let me start my practice in this area. Obviously, guys like Matt and Konzo were some of my closest friends in college. So, and at that point, guys like Konzo were still playing, and Ian Stanback was playing, and Brandon Brantley was playing, and those were my friends. And so I wanted to learn how they were operating in the agency world. And then guys like Ryan Grigson, who later became my client, were getting in the scouting world, in the world of the NFL. And so I wanted to hear how they did it. And I just really developed and maintained those relationships. I tell all young people, like, it's one thing to be, have relationships and meet people. You have to maintain those relationships. And that's something I think that I never took for granted. And so I maintained all those relationships, friendships, and eventually developed into business partnerships.
Yeah, you kind of, I wanted to ask you about what you think for young people that are looking to get into sports, not just the business that you're in, but in athletics. A couple key things that you see, that relationship building, but is there any other attributes that you say, boy, this is something that if you're going to work in big time sports, you really need to have in your hip pocket? Is there anything else from your perspective that you think is really important?
Well, when I go speak at schools or colleges or whatever, what I tell people all the time is when you're in school, in college, do you work, if you're not a student athlete, do you work for the athletic department? Or what have you done to show? Because the world of sports is not a job, right? It's a way of life.
Yeah.
If you work in basketball at the collegiate level, the professional level, you work on the agency side, whatever you're doing, a league office, it's a way of life. And it's okay if you don't want that to be your way of life, but don't do it because back in the day we used to watch Sports Center, like whatever it is, like you like watching games or stats and these type of things. It's because you're really passionate about that way of life. So you have to really, and if you are, then prove it. Prove it by getting experience, right? And like there might be jobs you can go back in the summer and make more money, and get more, and kind of you save some more dollars so you have while you're at school or whatever. But if this is something what you want to do, it's the ends justifies the means. It's the bigger picture. And so you have to get as much experience as you can. And you have to, again, as you meet people, right, and open to these relationships, you maintain these relationships. It's a competitive industry, and you have to realize if you want to be in it, you've got to be in that 1%. And so it's kind of like it's easy to talk the talk and more challenging to walk the walk, right? So that's the reality. Are you willing to put the time in? And look, as a student manager to this day, I mean, the guys that do that, any of the players will tell you, any of the coaches will tell you, they put in an incredible amount of work. They don't do it for the notoriety. They don't do it, for the money. They're not on scholarship. They do it because of the passion. And so some of the more successful people in the world of sports have started out in that way. And so that would be my best suggestion to, I guess if I had to sum it up.
Well said, and I think it's an important thing. And certainly in my own personal situation as a manager as well, it is just that. You want to have people that are willing to do things because they love it, and it has nothing to do with the money, and that part of it is important. When you look at how this has changed and how your business has changed, maybe the personality, social media, all the things that play into when you were getting high profile clients early on in your business, and now when you acquire them, is it different? Is it just do you need to have a different skill set from your perspective to be effective at this?
Again, I think things progress and the industries change, and obviously NIL and things of that sort are becoming more in vogue. But at the end of the day, we're in the people business, right? Yeah. And so, and the beautiful thing about the people business is there's going to be a lot of people that don't want your services, that you don't align with. But if you're good enough to help identify the ones that do and the ones that fit, then you can really have successful relationships. And so, things change every day in the industry, right? From whether it's contracts or brand associations or social media and all the different things that are evolving. But at the end of the day, it's still the people business. And so the nuts and bolts, right? The meat and potatoes of who we are hasn't really changed. And so you have to, just like the game of basketball changes, right? There was once no shot clock. There was once no three-pointer, right? And so do you change? Of course you change, right? I mean, three-pointer, look how the three-pointer is involved in basketball now as it was 30 years ago. Of course, things change in the game, and the same thing in business, in my end of the business. However, basketball is still basketball, right? And so, like you change it and you do those things. You're recruiting players. You're still recruiting players. The game has recruiting changed through the years. From a coaching perspective, of course. So for me, who's recruiting collegiate athletes to become professional athletes, has it changed? Of course, but you just adapt. And there's a lot of fluidity. It's somewhat organic over the course of time. It's not these sharp changes where you have to say, oh, we have to do things completely different. When you start doing that, I think that's when you get yourself in trouble. And that's what I referenced earlier with regard to Matt, right? Of course, you evolve and you work with the new information that you have, but your core has to remain the same.
talked about name, image, and likeness, and maybe looking at it from a college sports landscape. It's a brave new world out there, and a lot of opportunities now for undergraduates before they're done. How do you view this? You have a unique perspective, and we'll have some involvement in some fashion with this. How does it play out in your view, or is it way too early to tell?
No, I mean, first of all, it's not going away.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's something that was, absolutely essential, right? I mean, it's way past its time. It should have happened a long time ago. I look at it from both a player's perspective or a student athlete's perspective and from a program perspective,
Yeah.
right? I think the problem was it just came all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it didn't, because it came up, because I think the NCAA didn't really think it was going to happen. And so the NCAA didn't have any sort of plan in place, right, for this to happen. And so right now, I think it's kind of the wild, wild west. And I think you have athletic programs and, across the country that are trying to figure it out. I think you're going to have, I won't name it, not at our school, but other schools where you have people that are doing big name, image, and likeness deals, and they're not playing well. And there's going to be, again, because we are talking about young human beings, right? Young adults. There's going to be some dissension and kind of, issues in locker rooms and stuff like that. And so programs are trying to figure that out. And I don't blame the universities, because the universities just kind of got hit over the head as well. I think it would have been better if there was some sort of plan in place, which eventually I think there will be. Mm-hmm. Is that going to be tomorrow? No. Is it going to be next year? Probably not. But universities are going to have to figure out how to do this. And the ones that do are probably going to be more, effective with their programs, because look, it's real dollars, and student athletes and people are going to get attracted to that, right? Of the opportunity to make money in a legal fashion. And so, and then you look at it from the agent fashion, and there's a lot of agents that are going to take advantage of this and take advantage, unfortunately, of student athletes, and make promises on things that these kids are going to get, which they're not going to get, or when they can't deliver, maybe, kind of operate in an illicit fashion. But again, has that really changed, right?
No.
Bad guys are going to do bad things. Cheaters are going to cheat, but people that want to operate in integrity and ethics are going to figure out a way to be competitive in this new world.
Yeah, well said. But you've had we've all been dealing with COVID in the last year and a half, and it's obviously very, very personal to you. Just tell our listeners and viewers your story and why you've made it very public. I guess more of a question of why you chose to make that as public as you did, because it hits you so close to home.
Yeah, I mean, my parents died just a few minutes apart on March 29th, 2020, and with two of the earlier casualties from COVID. Right. My dad was 74 years old and had asthma, but nothing else. My mom was 71 and had zero health conditions. And in fact, my grandma lived to 95 and great grandma lived to 96. So, and then obviously early on, because we were trying to bring awareness to it because of the pain that we were sustaining as a family. And so that other people didn't have to go through that same level of grief. And then over the course of the last, almost year and a half plus, there's a lot of frustration that sets in when people, want to act like COVID's not a real thing. It doesn't really affect people. It doesn't really impact families. And, or that, again, everyone has their own option on whether they want to take a vaccine, but the vaccine was put in because people were locked in their homes and because people were dying. If you don't want to take it, I don't necessarily, whether my viewpoint on that is irrelevant, but to be against it, like it's a bad thing, is very troublesome to me. And because we're trying to get our society back to what it once was, what does that mean? Well, yes, leave our house, but when we leave our house, we feel safe and healthy and we're not at risk. And people are still dying and people are still getting very, very sick, including some close friends of mine. And so to me, because I have somewhat of a platform and I'm not, scared to share my opinion, and certainly the impact it's had on me is going to be hard to say, well, it's not real. And so someone could look at me and know and knew my parents as very vibrant people and then say, they were completely fine. And, week before that, I was out to dinner with them. And then all of a sudden they're gone and they're in the hospital, and it happened very, very fast. So, again, we're at a different time now, but still, it's still very real. And again, if I have an opportunity to use my platform to bring awareness and make a little bit of an impact, then I certainly feel like doing so. And some of it is frustration. Some of it is frustration about people not taking it seriously and thinking that it's not a real thing. So I think it's kind of a coupling of both those things.
Yeah, well said. I know that was not nothing about that was easy, but I admired your willingness to speak out and to continue to do that in the most difficult situation. So thanks so much for doing that. And if you haven't watched it, it's still available on social media too. It's quite a way of relating to the most tragic and difficult of situations. Buddy, thanks so much for your time. Very insightful as always. And we'll look forward to seeing you masked up in Mackey Arena, I'm sure, here before long. And
Yep.
that will be as much the case. And really, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
You got Alan, boiler up.